Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Book a Lunch Day. So today we're making beef and broccoli. I think I already made beef and broccoli one time before, but a patron of Farmersville requested me to make beef broccoli so she don't have to go through the videos again, and I'm happy to oblige. So here we go, beef and broccoli again. Part 2, right? So today we're using a kind of steak I got from Costco yesterday, and you can really use any kind of meat that you prefer. It really has more to do with the way you cut it and the way you season it. And then also broccoli. We have my 2 heads of broccoli over here. For seasoning, it's really easy. We have cornstarch, soy sauce, sugar, black pepper, and I always add a tiny bit of rice wine to it, but you don't have to if you don't want to, especially because beef usually doesn't have that strong of a smell to it. Beef usually is fine, and especially adding black pepper to it. So that's enough seasoning to get rid of the meat, that's sometimes the smell that we don't want in our meat. So the first thing I actually want to do is to cut our beef or our steak. I sometimes use steak, just depends on how you want to cut, whichever part, what kind of cut you want to use it. But I do want to cut in a thinner slice, so that's why I put it in the freezer for approximately an hour. It's still not super firm, but it's going to be a lot easier to deal with than if you have a piece of meat that's from like completely defrosted or fresh from the market. That's going to make it really difficult to cut and work with. Think about like cutting a slime, like a slime, like some. It's going to be really difficult for you to make the precise cut, but versus a brick, if you have the proper tool, it's going to be easy for you to cut it because it's really firm. Same idea here. If you freeze it and make it, or don't cut it when it's super defrost, then it's going to be a lot easier to work with. And then I also like to check the direction of the meat, so you can see. Walk over it this way. No, it's kind of gross. So direction of meat is going to be this way. You can see kind of where the muscle is going. You want to cut it horizontal to it. That's very important. If you don't cut it horizontal but parallel to, if you cut it parallel to it, the meat is going to be chewy. So that's the texture that we do not want. So we're going to cut it horizontally to that as best as you can. I'm not saying that you have to be perfectly like 90 degrees, as best as you can. Okay, so I'm going to cut my meat as thin as possible without cutting my finger off. The weather recently has just been really weird. It looks like it's going to rain in the morning, and then now it's super sunny. It's just bizarre. When I am making this type of stir-fry dish, I tend to cut my meat first, just so when I am and season it, just so when I am cutting my broccoli or my veggie that I decide to use, my meat is also being seasoned at that point, so I don't have to work on both. So I can have time. I don't have to wait for the meat to season. But if you want, you can definitely prep this the night before, or earlier in the day for dinner. Then that will be a lot easier. I'm going to cut my meat. All my pieces, you want to cut it as similar width as possible. So I'm cutting it approximately 0.1 inch, or like not very thick. I don't, especially with beef, I really don't want to cut it too um, make a big chunk. The reason is, if you are a steak lover, you will know that beef doesn't need to. You cannot cook beef for a long time, especially steak like this. If you cook it for a long time, it's going to be really dry and it's going to be chewy, and that's something that we do not want. So with a thinner cut, it's going to allow us to control the temperature better, and it's going to make it easier. So instead of the exterior of the meat is completely cooked, the center of the meat is not cooked, or so it's going to be chewy on the outside and raw on the inside. That's something that we don't want. So unless you're using other parts of the beef, or you decide to cook it for a long time, which doesn't really fit into the stir fry concept, you do want to cut your meat as thin as possible without cutting your finger. And usually I cut it like even smaller than half a centimeter. So I'm not gonna cut it in very big chunk. I know I was doing my research, and some recipe call it for a chunky feeling. Personally, I don't like it. I'm gonna butterfly the last chunk. Alright, so now my meat cutting board can go away. Because I'm going to need this. I'm going to pre-season my meat. And the same ingredient are going to use for seasoning the wok or my pan later on. So just a little bit of soy sauce. I did put on the ingredient list this time on the page, but I never put on how much you are going to need. The reason is it really depends on how much meat you are using, how much broccoli you are using, what kind of so just personally I always just eyeball it, but you don't need to add too much to it, really just for seasoning. And a little bit of rice wine, again this is optional. A little bit of black pepper. And tiny bit of sugar. And just mix it. Alright. I'm just going to let it season and sit here for a while. And then the very important thing is you do want to add your cornstarch at the end after you finish seasoning all your adding your soy sauce, your rice wine. You do want to add it in last, because the purpose of a cornstarch is to have that protective layer around your meat. So if you add that before you season it, your meat is not going to get all that ingredients. So you do want to add it in after you do that. And you only need a teeny tiny bit. If you add in too much, the coating will be it's going to be, too much coating, and then you're going to feel like very starchy feeling in your mouth, and that's not what we want. So we're going to season it. Oh, sorry, cornstarch went into my nose. Alright, so we're going to, and now your meat is going to be a little sticky, which is normal. And then what we want to do is a little bit of vegetable oil. That's going to help separate the meat once we are cooking it. Just give it another. The downside about freezing your meat is when you are seasoning it, your hand got really cold. So, alright. Let me wash my hands really quickly. Yeah. Alrighty, I'm gonna set this one aside. And let's just let our meat continue to marinate. It's gonna sit right there. Now we're gonna work on our broccoli. Now I already washed them, so it's fine. And then what I like to do is just cut off the broccoli off the stem one at a time. And like the bigger pieces, I will cut them in half. You don't want it to be a really gigantic piece. You want it to be as like a bite size as possible. Cut it in half. Cut it in half too. And then I don't know if everyone does this, but I do eat the stem of the broccoli. And here's how you do it. I like to chop off the end and chop off the top. And then so you have a very stable base. And then you just slice off the exterior of the broccoli stem. Just watch your finger when you're doing this. Now turn it around and do the... Just chop off as much of the white kind of stem as possible. That so it's not too hard. It's still fiber, so fiber source. And then I like to cut it in big pieces and go in there. So you know you're not just making this part go to waste. Do the same thing on this one. Go in there. Chop off the top, chop off the bottom, have the good base, and start slicing. It's called the heart of the broccoli, or the interior of the broccoli. Very good. Alright, so our broccoli is done. Oh, before I forgot, I do need to cut the garlics too. What very simply chop the garlic. If you have children or people that does not like garlic, you don't have to add in too much, or you can mince it. If you have people that's usually the rule of thumb, like depends on who I'm serving to, and if I know like okay my friend that doesn't really like the garlic taste, I will mince it, so that way it's not as visible, and he cannot take it out, right? But if let's say no, everyone is fine with garlic, or people that like garlic, I will make it into a bigger chunk so it's easier for them to pick out the garlic and eat it. It really doesn't matter how you want to cut your garlic, yeah, as long as it's in there, it's fine. So today I'm just going to do a quick slice of them. Very simple. Alright, done. Just something quick and easy. Stir fry is super easy, and you don't have to, you can always change it up. You don't always have to do broccoli, it's different broccoli. You can always switch to other kind of meat, other kind of veggie, as long as that's something you want. Alright. Alright, so now, just like when you're making steak, you do want to make sure your pan or your wok or whatever you decide to use is super duper duper hot. I'm going to add in our vegetable oil. Spatula. And how do you know it's super duper hot? One way that I learned is if you have a wooden spatula or a wooden chopsticks, just poke it in. As long as you see the oil, it's kind of bubbly where you put in your wooden spatula, then you're good to go. You don't want it to put your meat in when it's still cold. So that's something that you want to be careful with. All right, just it's a waiting game. Wait for it to heat up. This, my little stove is actually pretty good at that. I usually have trouble turning it down. Alright, so we're going to wait for it. Like, the faster the bubble is moving when you put on your spatula, that means the higher the temperature. And we're not going to be exact. That's not how a home kitchen, well, at least at my home kitchen, I like to do. I just kind of want to like guesstimate stuff. Probably a tiny little bit bigger. Just put on the side when I do my broccoli, just in case. You can do it. Alright, so I do see a little bubble. I do want to wait a little bit longer for the pan to get really hot. And so I was teaching my friend how to cook last week, and you know, she kind of got scared a little bit because the oil got everywhere. So this is what I taught her. Because I'm used to it, I cook all the time, so I'm very used to, you know, the oil get everywhere. You can definitely use the lid as a shield if you're scared, but because there is a little liquid that will come out. So if you got really scared, not the sound you want, like the sizzling sound, not the sound you want. And you want to make sure you're separating the beef really fast. So all that seasoning, all the meat, it's going to sear in once it hits the pan. Separate it. Cannot do the pan flip. Don't want to hit the camera. Just be good in your spatula. Just turn it around. Remove from the heat source. Now it's still cooking, okay? Don't just be because I remove it from the heat source. It's still cooking because the oil is really hot, and the meat is still cooking. Now I'm going to add in my garlic, but notice I turned off the fire. And I'm not going to add in more grease or oil to it. I'm just kind of going to, because I don't want to burn the garlic. If you keep your flame on, you might burn your garlic. So I just kind of want to utilize the garlic to cook a little bit, let it brown a little bit. And then once I turn it back on, I'm not going to go with super high heat. And I'm going to add in, because garlic burns easily. That's something I don't want. And I'm going to add in my broccoli. Now, I'm seasoning. So follow suit. Whatever seasoning you add to your pot, to your meat, do the same thing. But I do want to add in a little water first. That's going to help the broccoli cook. Broccoli does take a little longer to cook. And you do not want to put your lid on, okay? That's something you don't want to do. That's going to turn the broccoli soggy and not crunchy anymore. Soy sauce. You can add a little bit more in there if you want to. It's completely up to you. A little sugar. Oh, sugar everywhere. I'm not gonna add pepper in unless you want to. And if you like spicy, you can definitely add some what's that called? Chili or other spice seasoning to it. It's completely up to you. Now with the liquid inside, we can turn up the heat. Okay. I'm just gonna let it cook. Okay, so now the reason why I am not going to that I cook the veggie and the beef separately, it's mainly because veggie is going to take a little longer to cook. If you don't do that, it's going to be really difficult for you to calculate the time that both of them cook at a perfect timing. So cooking it separately but with the same or similar seasonings is definitely going to help you make sure that they have the similar taste to it, but make sure both ingredients are cooked to the time that they are supposed to be at. So we're just let it cook. And now I like my broccoli to be completely cooked through, so I'm just going to wait a tiny bit longer. So I really don't like the broccoli raw taste. It just has a really weird taste to it, but it's kind of like an earthy taste to it, and that's something I don't want. And broccoli, like the family of broccoli, sometimes if you don't cook completely through, you can taste like a little bitter. So I like to make sure it's cooked completely through. And cutting your broccoli into bite size will help, so it doesn't require as long to cook. Sometimes when you go to like Chinese restaurant, they have like big chunk of broccoli. That's because they're cooking in a larger amount. And second of all, they probably like cook it in water or do something like that. But at home, just do it in bite size. That's fine. Okay, so our broccoli is done. Cook. You can see all the liquid is almost, evaporated. Then you add in your meat. And there is some seasoning left from the meat also, so I'm going to add in to that. Now you stir fry it together. Alright, and then you turn it off. And you're all set. All done. Very easy. From cutting to what we spent less than 30 minutes. And I would have done it faster if I'm not explaining. But see how easy that is? You are not panicking or anything like that. It's a very easy dish to make. You don't have to go to Panda Express to do this. Although you can. Alrighty. Now if you're scared that your beef is not cooked completely through, give it a little 1 minute extra. That really depends on how thick you cut it. Like I said, I like to cut my meat very thin, so I'm not worried about whether or not it's completely cooked through. And beef and broccoli is a very classic stir fry in Asian American Asian restaurant. But it's definitely not something that you will commonly see when you travel in Asia. Usually they would just put like whatever vegetable that's in season instead of, and then they'll saute it with stir fry with the meat. But I guess broccoli is always in season here, so beef and broccoli and it's a cheap ingredient, to be honest. So it's a very common, and they become a classic. You don't really, any Chinese restaurant would have it, but when you travel in China or in Taiwan or other part of Asia, when you want the beef and broccoli, it's actually you might not be able to find it just because it will be like, why must you have broccoli with beef? I only have cabbage or stuff like that. All right, let's try my beef. It's very tender, so if you follow the way I cut it, follow the way I do it, you don't only have to do beef and broccoli. You can do cabbage with broccoli. You can do pepper with beef and stuff like that. You can switch it up. And I see a little bit of broccoli. It is cooked through, and because we cook it in the sauce, so it really eat up all the seasoning. So it's really good. Choke. It's too good. I'm choking. And it's healthy too. So give it a try. Give it a try. I do see some recipe that they like to put sesame on top. No, go for it if you want to do that. I personally never done that in my kitchen. Like, I don't do that for all the meals, but if that's what you prefer, go ahead. And some other recipe call for sesame oil instead of vegetable oil. Go ahead. Personally, I feel like sesame oil is going to give it a stronger punch. And I don't like that it take away from the soy sauce and my seasoning. So I didn't use that. But if you want to do that, go ahead. It's not a big deal if you decide to use to switch up an ingredient. As long as you kind of follow through the main concept of cooking, then you'll be fine. Alright, so that's it. That's a stir-fry beef and broccoli. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys really did try it, and I hope whoever requests this dish, try it and let me know how you made it. Alright, bye guys!